listening to Let's Talk Sustainable Business.
Hi, my name is Barbara Mendes-Jorge, and I am a sustainability communications expert based in Brussels, Belgium. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Let's Talk Sustainable Business, a series brought to you by the Conference Board. Today is the first of a two-part episode with Genica Schaefgen. Genica is Head of Ecosia Germany and a board member of the Social Entrepreneurship Network Germany. The theme for this episode is the S in ESG, social. Ecosia positions itself as a social business, and the Berlin-based company is best known as the search engine that plants trees, as it uses advertising revenue gained from searches for tree planting projects. According to Ecosia, it takes about 45 searches to fund the planting of one new tree. This number could be reduced depending on other factors, like whether you click on an advert and how valuable the search term is in terms of advertisement payout. Launched in 2009 to coincide with the UN climate talks in Copenhagen, Ecosia claims to have planted more than 179 million trees since its inception and says it enables a tree to be planted every 1.3 seconds. Ecosia uses 80% of its profits, that's 47% of its income, from advertising revenue to support tree planting projects in 15 different countries, including Brazil, Haiti, Spain, Morocco, Ghana, and Indonesia. More recently, in 2020, Ecosia launched the debit card company TreeCard, a debit card that dedicates 80% of its profits earned from merchant transaction fees into planting trees. Ecosia is TreeCard's official planting partner. Welcome, Genica. I am looking forward to talking to you about search engines, trees, and social entrepreneurship today.
Hi, Barbara. It's a pleasure to be here.
Nice to meet you. So first of all, can I ask you to summarize your job? What is it that you do at Ecosia?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question because it's so many things. So basically, I am representing the German market at Ecosia. We are a global search engine, right? But our four core markets are Germany, France, UK, and the US. And Germany is our home market, so to say. And I'm taking care of brand representation and growth here with a very specific focus, which is climate action. Something that might sound unfamiliar when talking to a tech company, but it's very dear to our heart.
Very good. And how did your career lead you to this position?
Well, I think it wasn't my career leading me, but rather me leading my career, if you can say that. I used to work in a very classical marketing startup, and then I noticed that I really don't want to use my spare time to sell unnecessary stuff to people. And I reflected on my values and found out, well, I really want to use my skill set for something that's closer to my ecological values. And I found Ecosia and the position that we just talked about. And this was in 2018, I believe. And ever since I've been with Ecosia, and I came to stay.
Very nice. So can you explain to the listeners exactly how searches on Ecosia lead to the tree planting projects?
Yeah, of course. So just like any other search engine, we also make money off ads. And you mentioned that initially, right? So if you're, for instance, want to travel to, I don't know, Dublin, for instance, and you're looking for a hotel there, it's very likely that if you're looking for a hotel in Dublin or Ecosia, there will be a hotel booking platform advertising for it. And if you click on this ad, no matter what you do afterwards, we will make money off that. And thanks to this revenue stream, we are able to plant trees where they're needed the most to regenerate ecosystems and everything that's connected to that. Basically, we're paying our fixed costs, right? We have an office, we do have salaries, we do have a tech infrastructure that needs to be paid, and we have marketing. But then everything else, the profits, are used for tree planting and climate action. So you mentioned 80% go into tree planting and the remaining 20% into different climate action activities.
Very nice. I mean, you mentioned climate action, and I wanted to ask you, why was tree planting chosen as the focus? Because obviously there's many other issues that could be linked to dealing with climate change. Why was it trees that called to Ecosia's founder?
Yeah, trees, I think, are really underestimated still to this date, despite so many companies suddenly, all of a sudden, saying, oh yeah, we also plant trees. We could look more in depth into how well they are doing that. But trees really come with a whole holistic approach of ecological magic and social magic if you do it right. Because no matter, if you're doing it right, you can actually like regrow a forest. A forest is a healthy ecosystem in the ideal case, and you can connect it to water scarcity to make sure that the water is coming back to the rivers or lakes. You can connect it to lack of food or of income for certain families, in a way to connect it to regenerative agroforestry and so many more models that are out there. So you can solve so many things at a time. And one of the many, many benefits is also that it filters CO2, which is connected to climate change. But it's just like one of many things. Like the biodiversity crisis is just as big, and trees are incredibly essential in order to fight back on this topic. So we decided to go with tree planting, and we wanted to do it right. And to this date, I believe we are taking this mission we gave ourselves very seriously. But of course, we do see that there are also other problems out there. And this is what we want to tackle with climate action.
Would you think in future to expand beyond tree planting, or is that going to remain the focus? I think you also do biodiversity efforts, if I read correctly. So yeah, I understand that you've chosen trees because we might initially just think of carbon emissions, but like you said, it's a whole ecosystem. But I was wondering if there was anything else that you thought you might add to that portfolio.
Definitely. I mean, we are here to help solve the climate crisis in a very social way, like bring balance to people and planet in a way. Like that's a very big picture vision. But ways to get there, the means to get there can vary. Like we are a so-called steward-owned company. This means that there is at the essence of Ecosia, there is our purpose, and it's not planting trees. The purpose of Ecosia is to bring balance to people and planet. And right now, we're focusing on trees. But if at a later point we decide, well, this is not the most effective way to get there anymore, then this may change. But for the time being, it will be trees.
It will be trees. Have you been able to visit any of these projects on the ground at all?
Actually, yes. So if you're working at Ecosia, and if you've been with us for a while, you can accompany one of our tree planting officers when they go on a trip to visit the project, to help with the monitoring and some trainings on how to monitor and so forth. And I was lucky enough to still during like the big COVID era, but after the lockdowns, um, accompany our tree planting officer Melissa to Ghana to visit one or two actually of our projects there. It was the first time ever, and it was exceptional to meet the people that are initiating the project on the ground, and then we get to work with them, right? It's not that we initiate something, it's always the people that want to change the nature they live in. They want to use the land in a different way, and it was very, very inspiring to meet those passionate people and to listen to their stories, why, how, and maybe sometimes also what are the obstacles in the way and how we can help solve them.
Yeah, it must be very satisfying to actually see the work that you're doing have an effect, to actually be able to physically see it with your eyes, right?
It is a very big difference to before when I used to work in the startup. Working on the laptop, I mean, so do I today, most of the day, most of the time. But in the end, I knew that more people bought some stuff that I really don't think is necessary. So yeah, it's a big difference. It's very gratifying, if that's also a word. Yeah.
Tempted to go for a job there to see if I can go and visit some places too, but for now I'll stay here in Brussels. You touched upon kind of the carbon offset schemes that are becoming so popular with companies, and those have been quite mired in controversy in recent years, sometimes because companies rely on them too much to cut their carbon emissions, but sometimes because not enough trees are getting planted or the trees are not getting planted in the correct environment. So how do you avoid these kinds of issues in your tree planting projects?
Yeah. Let me start with saying that the climate crisis is so much more complicated than carbon emissions, right? There are so many different kinds of emission. And again, there is the biodiversity crisis lurking around, just as threatening, if not even more than the climate crisis, at least for humanity. Um, but of course, carbon emissions are a very big factor. So it's important to focus on it, especially from an industrial point of view, because it's mostly like economic industries and systems that have brought us where we are, came along with wealth and health for many countries, but still it is an issue. And so now everyone's talking about carbon neutrality, CO2 offsets, and tree planting. But because they look at this from such a very like simple perspective, I feel like there's so much complexity missing in this conversation. And that's why all the schemes, all the efforts towards tree planting are not done in a holistic way, are not done in a sustainable way, not meaning like carbon neutral, but actually sustainable in a way that it's like long lasting and meaningful and purposeful for everyone involved.
So what you're implying, I guess, is that when Ecosia gets involved in these tree planting projects, you really take a holistic approach and, look very carefully with the people on the ground to see what kind of trees, how often, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. Now I was just like pointing out pointing out what I see is going wrong. But exactly, to answer your question precisely, um, the first thing we do is to talk to the people and say, like, what are the issues that you have here except for trees that are missing? Like, is it water scarcity? Is it that you had to cut down the trees and plant palm oil monocultures, oil palms monocultures, because you need the money, like because your family can't survive otherwise? Like, what is the root cause of deforestation? And then we start the conversation and try to figure out what is the model that can help you, the people we work with. For instance, in Indonesia, we support farmers that initially have used their land for renting it out to big palm oil industries in order to get the money. But then they notice, oh yeah, the orangutans are dying out, the soil is completely dead, and they're just those big palm trees in monoculture. There's no benefit to us. So what's the alternative? And we are doing an agroforestry model where they're also some oil plants and other plants that have a yield to it that they can sell, but in between there is like actual forest growing. So we have, like, in German you say you hit two flies with one hit.
Yes, in English, you catch two birds with one stone. So there we
Yeah, we caught those birds.
It might be a situation where, for example, I guess if you go into a project where the soil is not good quality anymore, maybe your money will help in kind of give the right nutrients to the soil, so then you can plant trees. So it's not just a question of you go, hello, we want to plant trees, we turn up, here's our money. It sounds much more.
More or less, yeah. So we are basically then if the soil is bad, we would um, ask them to plant the trees that are giving the necessary nutrients to the soil before we plant the next batch of trees. We always do it in a very ecological thing. But for instance, in some countries, in some projects, there's a totally different aspect to it. Like in Brazil, for instance, the fires, the wildfires. I mean, now we have a new president and a new agricultural minister, and both are very ambitious towards saving the Amazon rainforest. But there's still lots of work to be done. And of course, we do have tree planting partners in Brazil along the Atlantic rainforest. And a big batch of money is going towards fighting fires and also like preventative measures, because it's just part of fighting deforestation.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm originally from Portugal, and there are currently some forest fires going on. So this is obviously very important. And yeah, when you're from those areas, you really feel it more, these issues. Going back to the kind of carbon terms, so I think Ecosia says that it is carbon negative because you do so much in terms of tree planting that you're giving back to the environment. I want to ask, as we're in this kind of phase where terms like carbon neutral and net zero are being used and sometimes abused by companies, how does Ecosia back up this claim? How do you see yourselves in this carbon negative space?
Yeah, I would even say that we are carbon positive because let me start out there. We are a tech company. So because we are not like a producing company, of course, in general, our ecological footprint or our carbon footprint is a little lower. So it's easier for us to look at it from a very like simple perspective, right? Because it's not as complex. So as a tech company that runs a search engine, we of course, like, the main factor is the service that we are running all around the world in order to provide the searches that people, the 20 million users that we have, are requesting. And what we did is we looked at the calculation behind it and how much energy it is that we need, that is being produced for us as a company and as a brand. And then we started building solar panels. Like, I think it was in 2016, we launched the first one in Germany. And ever since, we kept on building solar panels on roofs, but also on bigger fields in order to combat that emission. So that's where the climate neutrality claim is coming from. And then on top, we plant trees. And that's why we say we do not look so much into the CO2 that those trees are sucking out of the air, because we want to keep this holistic view. But it is definitely more than we are using up, because we are already climate neutral. So Ecosia is climate positive.
Okay, interesting.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. So what I found very interesting is that when you go on the Ecosia website, you publish your financial reports every month. So you can see how much you spend on specifically trees, green investments, taxes and social security, marketing, and operational costs. So I'd like to know, what was the decision behind continuously providing this higher level of transparency, and what are the pros and cons related to having to share this information every month?
So I think we started out doing this very early on, because it was founded in 2009, as you mentioned. And I think it was just very early in the beginning that we started doing those financial reports. Reason being is that the currency we deal with is trust, because people, we say we use all of our profits to do good, and that's why people use us. That's what they base the decision on. So we need to earn their trust, and we go many routes to try and earn that trust by becoming a steward-owned company, so giving away our shares to a foundation, for instance, by being a B Corp, by like going all the way with all those labels and stuff. But also we want to be as transparent as possible in order to make sure that people see, oh, it's true what they say. Like, we strip naked. And that's why we do it, because I think we kind of owe it to our users.
Mm-hmm.
And well, the pros and cons. The pro is it's important for us to have, like, from a company culture perspective, to have this attitude that we owe our users honesty, transparency, authenticity. I think it informs many of our actions and how we look at finances as well. And then the con side to it is a little bit more work.
That's
You
what
know,
I wanted, yeah.
it gives us a different pair of glasses when we look at financials. And how to distribute it and make it visible and all of this. It's more work, but it's worth it. That's why we do it every month.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you haven't really had any kind of backlash from your stakeholders, because it really is very transparent.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, of course, depending on where you are, and if it's a tree planting area where there are many things that have also been going wrong in the past with other brands, sometimes there are people reaching out to you and say, "Oh, that's nice that you do all of this, but I want to have a legally confirmed copy of your bank account details every month." Like, legally, that would mean that we had to go to, I don't know what the English word for this is, like basically something like a lawyer to, you can never satisfy everyone, but we are trying to hold ourselves accountable to the best we can.
Yeah, that's good. And I mean, I'm guessing, are you the only one or one of the only tech companies in this field with that level of transparency? I would guess so.
I mean, I don't know everything about all of our competitors, but I think that to this extent, no one's able to compete, because I mean, it's already hard to find a company that makes, I don't know, what is it, like 30 million annual revenue and gives away around about 50% of that in terms of being 100% of the profits. Very hard to find.
And yeah, you can go and look up those numbers on the Ecosia website to make sure that Jenica's correct.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Genica, for joining us today. This is the first of a 2-part episode, so join us next time for part 2. And thanks to our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to this podcast series and explore the entire catalogue of podcast programming from the Conference Board by visiting our website at tcb.org/podcasts. See you next time.
That was Let's Talk Sustainable Business.